father, children.
My father.
Grandfather.
My grandfather.
Sister.
Farmer. My son.
A farmer's son.
Children.
My father.
Family.
Brother.
Living off the land, 100 years of farming in South Devon. Episode 1, Born in the Farmhouse. Stories of growing up on the farm. Farming families.
Yeah, well, I was Marjorie White before I was married, and I was born at Little Cotton, and we were one of, well, four actually. I was the second daughter, and then I had a brother, Roy, and then 12 years after that I had a younger sister, Audrey, which was of great joy. I can't remember until I started school, you know, and that must have been when I was about 5. I was born in 24, so it was probably 30 before I can really remember. And the first thing we had to walk, and, well, there was the 3 of us, and we used to meet our friends, other neighbours, and there'd be a gate at the end of our lane where we met the others. And whoever went on first had to put a stone on the gate, and then you'd know they'd gone on, you see. You always had to remember to take a stone off when you came back in the evening to make sure you started with a clean plate in the morning. One of the girls I went to school with, she lived nearly a mile further back the road from me, and she rode a pony from Lower Norton to Stoke Fleming. Dear little pony, Tiny he was called.
My grandfather used to hit the roof a bit and used to fall out regularly with his landlords. So in those days you could get farms quite easily, and they used to move on a reasonably regular basis. So they moved from Team Valley, Ashton or Bridford, and then they moved to Brownston Farm, Kingsware. And then in 1931 they came down to South Devon. They set off from Brownston Farm, Kingsware, with all the cattle and sheep. My grandfather, my father and his brother, and a future brother-in-law and a friend, the family, on horseback, and drove all the cattle and sheep by road in one day. They came across one certain gentleman when they were about 5-6 miles away, and he said, if your stock are very tired, he said, I own all the land between here and South Devon. You can put them in any field you like. Anyway, it turned out to be he didn't own any land whatsoever. But fortunately, they didn't put him in any fields. I always remember going in the hairdresser, and my father said to me, he said, that was the bloke there, he said, that didn't own a damn thing, he said.
I think the first thing I can sort of remember, say 27, was the birth of my brother, and he's 4 years younger than me. And I don't remember any detail, but I think from what I recall, my mother had a difficult birth, and there was a lot of confusion. And the thing I remember was, it was on a very fine day, and they were making hay down the field, down the bottom of the farm. And I was taken down there. I remember going down to this field, and to get me out of the way, presumably, I don't know. I don't know who took me there, but I remember going there. I can still remember it. And then we came back to the house, and there was a lot of demand on, wanted hot water, I remember that, you see. And then it was boiled on a wood fire with an old crock, wasn't it? And that's one of my first memories, really. And I was 4 then. But then after that, it gets a bit vague again. But that was something that just stuck in my mind, I suppose.
I'm very proud of the fact that we've just 3 years short of the family being here 100 years. My grandfather came as a tenant in 1916 of the Butland Saints estate, which is now, the house is now an hotel, which many people will probably know of. And 1921, the country squire sold his farms mostly to his tenants, and my grandfather purchased this farm. And in 1923, my father was born in bedroom number 1. And in 1945, I was born in bedroom number 1. And in bedroom number 1, my first brother was born in 1950. And in 1953, my other brother was born in room number 3. But my sister, 16 years after I was born at a maternity home at Totnes. So that is a little bit of the history of us here at Bearscombe.
I'm John Sherrill. We're at Great Prudhoe Farm, which is just outside Newton Ferries.
Yes, and I'm his mum, also speaking at Great Prudhoe, although I've retired from here now.
I suppose the history of it is that my mum and dad, you were farming with my granddad for a little bit, weren't you? And then you went on your own, which was at Holberton.
My father-in-law was a tenant at Fleet Estate, which is and farmed right round to Holberton. I think Sherrills have been around for about 300 years there, haven't they? Something like that. But when I married my husband, John's father, we created a farm here, really. So now we farm some here, bought some at Battersby Cross, and you still farm quite a lot of Fleet Estate as well in the middle of Holberton, don't you?
Yeah, still farm that farm at Holberton.
Yeah. And the whole place is now organic.
Yeah, it's
high
organic.
level stewardship, so there's a lot of conservation there.
Well, I'm Mark, I'm the tenant farmer. I'm 42 years of age. I'm married with 4 children. My wife's a school teacher. My daughter Darcy's 14. My other daughter Imogen's 12. Alice is 10. And Dexter, my son, is 7. I've now been farming since 1990. I previously was a mechanic for 4 years, at a local garage, and then came home on the farm in 1990. I succeeded my father in 2000 by moving into the farmhouse and taking over the tenancy of the farm, and I thoroughly enjoy farming.
I was born at Lower House Farm, which father took the farm on in about 1938, and at that time he had been courting for 9 years, and they managed to get the tenancy on the farm. So Grandpa Tucker said to my father, you can get married now because we got a place for you to live. And they had Lower House Farm rent free for 2 years because farming was so bad and nobody wanted the farms. So they had it rent free for 2 years. They got married, and my sister Sally was born in 1939. We are 6 children. Sally is the eldest. Sally, my sister Sally, she's down at Bambuck Tires down Lee Mills, Sally O'Connell she's called. And then William farms at Scobo. And then it's me. Then it's my brother John at Bigbury-on-Sea. And then my brother Robin, who's got farm down at Chillington. And then my youngest sister is Jane, and she lives in Dallas, Texas, where I'm going to tomorrow.
My father was actually born in the bedroom above us, and he's lived here all his life up to, he moved out briefly between 68 and 76 at the farm cottage, didn't you? And then moved back down here as a tenant in 76 and continued to live here until 2000, so when he had built his own bungalow out of the village and moved out there in 2000, and I have been here since.
Childhood jobs.
So we used to feed the tame lambs. I couldn't be more than 4 or 5. No, not even that. Yes, we used to do that. We used to help bring the sheep in and do that sort of thing. As you got older, you started doing ploughing planting potatoes. We used to plant them by hand before we had machines. Used to ridge out the rows, open out the rows, and then drop them down by hand, and then cover them back with another banker, and that's how it was done. Now it's all machines, automatic. Put a ton box in a bin and it plants them. There were certain times of the year when we were digging potatoes, if we were digging potatoes on a Saturday, we used to get all the young people coming from the local villages to earn pocket money. That used to happen quite a bit. And the other thing is when you used to come home from school on the school bus, is when I'm a teenager, coming from Kingsbridge School, you used to come back in the bus and you used to be able to look when you were coming back from that way. You could see quite a big area and all the farms. And you'd always see that either Farmer Baker or Farmer Fraser or one of them had baled some hay, and there were lots of bales in the field. And you knew that evening you'd go and help him pick them all up, and that's what they used to bale them a nice sunny afternoon, and they were there ready to pick up in the evening. And it was a way of earning a bit of pocket money.
As soon as I could walk, Mother used to keep a chicken house down in the bottom of the orchard. And yeah, so you'd be sent off down there to pick up the eggs 2 or 3 times a day, so the eggs didn't get dirty. But yeah, picking up eggs is one of the first things I remember. Scrubbing in Lower House Farm, where I was born, where we lived, the floors were all Purbeck stones, slabs. And one of the jobs I used to do on a Saturday, which used to take me most of the day, was to scrub all the floors on your hands and knees. And for that I used to get 5 bob for scrubbing all Mother's floors. And then we had the shop in Dartmouth, and then on Saturdays also you would go to Dartmouth delivering orders around all the different houses in Dartmouth, because he always did order delivery on Saturdays. I know Uncle Bill, he used to send me off up Nelson Steps, and I think it's 72 steps or 92 steps it is. And you had to carry this box of produce all the way up the steps to somebody's house up there.
Oh, picking up the eggs. Delivering milk and cream to the people down the road. Yeah, delivering milk and cream. Riding with Father's lorry. They had a shop in Dartmouth, so we would go once every so often, once every 3 weeks, we go to Dartmouth, delivering orders around the Dartmouth shops. Up lots of steps, sometimes three flights. But always finishing up at Mr. Westicott's. He drank hot tea. He was a tailor. It was rather funny, that was. Packets of sweets and sweets from the sweet shop, and meat from the butcher's over opposite, and coming home and telling the tale.
Oh, probably from 6, 7 onwards. I remember climbing up on the trailers and doing that, and all those type of jobs. But I mean, as a child, it always seems romantic. Christmas was a wonderful time as a child, wasn't it? And as you get older and have kids, it's hard work. So I suppose it was the same when you was a child on the farm. But it was a lovely time on the farm growing up, wasn't it? You could, the summers seemed long, and the blackberries always used to get picked day after day, picking blackberries and all the rest of it. So I mean, that side of it. But now, as you get older, I suppose for Dexter and Alison, Darcy and Imogen, it seems a long romantic time now when exciting things happen, when the contractor comes in. They'll be telling the story of when the contractor used to come in when they're old, and probably there'll be a spaceship doing the same job in 50 years' time or whatever. But you know what I mean? So it's the revolver of life, isn't it? Just revolves on.
Uncle Bill died in 1955, so I was 12. He had hives of bees, so I used to take on looking after his bees. And there was also a lady and gentleman, Mr. and Mrs. Wasserman, who, funnily enough, is Kate's godmother, and though she's come from London. Mr. and Mrs. Wasserman, they had hives of bees as well in the village. It was a holiday home for them. But their bees were Italian, good workers, but sting like a devil. I used to keep bees. I always used to cultivate all the gardens over at Town Farm after Uncle Bill died. So I used to, still got my gardening books here now, where I wrote everything down. So gardening, helping Dad. At harvest time, when they were busy, the men were busy harvesting. I would get the cows in and hand milk a couple of cows for milk to go in the house. There I must have been about 11, I reckon I was.
One of the things I used to do of a weekend when we lived at Trenwell Farm was we used to, on Saturday, Father used to do all his fencing for the sheep every week on a Saturday. And my job was to go up and pick up all the wire netting stakes, which were stakes about 3 inches in diameter. And I used to have to go up and carry these stakes and lay them out so they gave these sheep a fresh block of Swede turnips to have for the rest of the week. And also in those days we used to chop up Swede turnips. We had a little engine with a chopper at the end of the row, and they used to give these sheep Swedes every day so that they had a fresh supply as well as what they could nibble as well. So it's a lot more labour intensive then.
Our recreation was very, very simple. Brother and I used to go rabbiting every Saturday, just the two of us, with a ferret and nets. If you catch a rabbit, because that's what we went for. It's the only way you'd get pocket money as little children in those days. If you caught a rabbit that size, he'd be 4p. If you caught one that size, he'd be 6p.
I suppose when I was really young, the best thing used to be trying to catch the rabbits that were usually running around the fields in those days like 2 a penny. And you think you'd caught one and you'd trip over a sheave and somebody back behind you would be just laughing their heads off. Sometimes if we weren't using the horses, I used to then go out with a ferret and nets and catch the rabbits. And then on a Monday morning, my mother used to take them into the butcher's shop for me and get a shilling a brace at the butcher's shop for them. And that was pocket money for me in those days. But I suppose in those days we'd catch about 10 brace over the weekend of rabbits in the nets.
When I was 11, 12, 13, our neighbour had a family as well, and his sons were the same age as my brothers and I. Our little bit of farming was our little bantams. We used to breed our bantams, sit them and hatch the chicks, and then we decided we needed new bloodlines, so we would have to exchange each other's cockerels. So how did we catch the cockerels? Because when they're roosting, we were in bed, so we had to catch them in daylight. So it sounds a bit cruel, but we used to chase them until they couldn't get away from us anymore.
Well, I think my generation was very involved. We were very involved. We used to do similar to you. We'd spend all day on the tractor, wouldn't we? And I suppose due to the more mechanical way the farms run, there is less opportunity for them to come out. Then saying that Dexter will come out a lot, won't he?
He will do, but you've got to be health and safety.
Yeah, you got to be. You think about it probably more now than what you did when I was kids, and probably more so than when Dad was a child. But I mean,
well, back in my days, it was manual tools.
Yeah.
You had a hoe, because when you were out hoeing, all you had was a hoe. If they were trimming the hedges, it was a paring hook. If they were doing hay out in the field, it was a prang or pitchfork, as you would like to call it. So all the tools they used, although they were dangerous in some respects, they were less dangerous to people around, whereas modern day machinery is very much more dangerous. So that is the difference, that's happened over my lifetime.
Inheriting the farm.
My grandfather then my father, and then I.
Well, as a child, I mean, all three of us boys were always very interested in the farm, as in we probably didn't do a great deal of work to help Dad, but we caused a lot of nuisance, and you know, that side of it, we was always outside digging something or throwing something or building something or smashing something up or something to cause chaos. So that side of it was always, you know, when you're born on a farm, you've got that freedom to grow up on a farm, and we disappear for all day sometimes. You know, we go down the wood digging all afternoon, or we go on our push bikes down the valley. So you always had that in you.
When I was growing up, it was always going to be I would be a farmer, and most of the farmers were like that. The farmer's son must become the farmer. They had to have a son and heir for the continuity of it. And of course, it still is very much like that, because it's a very, very difficult business to get into if you're not a farmer's son.
As a little boy watching Father with the binder and making the canvases up, because I was just old enough to remember it, and the thrashing machine coming in, and the binder and the first sheet. I saw the first sheet flick out like magic, and I couldn't work out what it was, and you'd be and then another one would flick out along it, fish in the well. That's what I saw at first.
Although there are farming colleges, it's still very, very difficult, and possibly the only real way into farming these days is through a farming college and become a farming manager, and possibly be better paid than what a farmer could earn for himself.
I was never the tenant, and this comes back to the laws of the landholder. My father was a tenant, and there was no security of tenant in those days. And when he was getting into the end of his years, and I was a bit anxious, because if he'd have passed away, I should not have had any chance of buying the farm. But it was sold within his lifetime, and I hadn't to get the chance of buying it. So that's how I got established in Strashley. So I was privileged in some way. It's an opportunity I had that other people didn't get. There was another family, boys that I was friendly with on the farm, on the estate, and they'd lost their father in that circumstance, and they had to move away from the farm. So, you know, it's just good luck and bad luck, isn't it?
But it's a way of life. I've always been brought up as a way of life, and as I said earlier, I was never encouraged to do anything but be a farmer, and my two brothers as well were on the farm. But I was the one who came through as being able to run a business on their own, and whereas my other brother would be very good as working, but he would need to work for somebody.
And to see the value of food, is what then, and the lengths they went, and the steepness of the fields they harvested with the standard fortune and spade logs, and then come around the bottom, and they didn't have enough power in the standard fortune to come up the hill, so then they'd have a long wire rope to pull him up over this nip. I just couldn't believe what I saw. Just cannot believe that.
And she's got 3 children. They're not that keen on it yet, but so we've got 3 grandchildren from Sarah, and then we've got our son Tim, who was on the farm for a short while, but I think he found it a little overcrowded with 3 generations of farmers, and he went off in another direction and has never regretted it, and he's in Spain now running a fish and chip shop quite successfully. And our younger son Mark is in London, and he works in insurance. He's got a fiancée, and our children, I can say, really are all very happy, but unfortunately not a successor. But try to keep the farm going if I can, keep it in the family, certainly for this 100 years that we're 3 years short of, and maybe by that time the grandchildren will be showing whether they want to stay here or not. Unfortunately, their name isn't Kurzweil, but that's how things are. My 2 brothers didn't have a family, and I've got 2 sons that as yet haven't had a family either. It's not vital, but it would be nice to keep it in the family if we can.
Did I ever see myself as a farmer? Probably not at 16. No, never did. But there's a saying in there, when I was 16 my father was a fool. When I was 21 he was a good chap. So basically you grew up in that period. So many people seeing yourself. But I think Dad was different because you always saw yourself as farmer, did you?
Oh yes, I went to school in Street, and then I went to school in Kingsbridge, and I can remember in those days careers weren't talked about. I can remember just one teacher asked me what I was going to do when I left school. Nobody else was interested, and I said, I'm going home on the farm. And I come straight home from school on the farm and started work next day. And that's how it went on. And I went to day release courses at Bicton for 5 years. And from there on, I've always worked on the farm and done nothing different.
And the horses planting the potatoes with a single furrow plough, which my brother William's got one of those, and I've still got the scuffle. And that's my first memories of planting potatoes, all four of us.
But I think farming in those days, majority of Dad's generation actually did come home. Farming was quite affluent at the time. It was perceived to be a very good income stroke workload. Probably by the time I got there, farming, early 90s, farming had not deemed to be as fashionable or as profitable. So I didn't actually at the time see myself as a farmer, but doing something else for 4 years actually makes you realise, as my wife says, farm is in a cocoon. As long as you work hard and you do well, it all works well. So yeah, I would not do anything else different now. But then you talk to Dexter, my son at 7, ask him what he wants to do. He wants to be a farmer.
And to watch them with horses, and then to have the tractor in the same length of wire rope coming over the hill down at Molecombe House. And they pull the wire rope down, and then the tractor would go down the drive at Molecombe to get it up. Just fascinating.
I can remember going out feeding the cows, and yeah, obviously, you know, we were milking here in a very small sort of parlour compared to what we're milking in today. We were milking 8 cows at a time. It was always at the back of my mind. That's why I always wanted to be a farmer. And yeah, it's that's right. And then I think it's the same with my son Tom as well. He's always sort of been very keen. We've always been. Well, I've encouraged Tom, and Dad encouraged me. You know, so it's. Tom is now 20. He's at home now. He's done an apprenticeship through the local college, and he's also been to New Zealand and worked over in New Zealand. So yeah, he's very keen on the business. But the business is, you know, we've had to grow the business to make it efficient and economical. And when you sort of look around, there's a lot of family businesses that really struggle. But hopefully, we're in a strong enough position now to allow the next generation to come into the business.
In Born in the Farmhouse, we heard from Harry Kurzweil, Jill Kurzweil, David Dark, Phil Dark, David Wall, Mark Wall, Richard Foss, John Sherrill, Jean Sherrill, Roger Tucker, John Tucker, Bill Salter, and Marjorie Buckpitt. Living Off the Land was produced by Lucinda Guy for Sound Art Radio in partnership with South Devon Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, and was supported by the Heritage Lottery Fund as part of All Our Stories.